Hello, fellow freelancers. Today I want to talk to you about how I read books and about reading books in general. And just how I read them. I'm not saying this is the best or the worst or the good or the right or the wrong way or whatever to read them, but this is the way I read them. And I've touched on this before, but I touched on it mostly for business books and books that are, done for your business or for helping you with your career. But here I just want to talk about books in general and how I read them and what I do. First of all, I read whatever books I want. I've trying to become a lot more particular with that, and that I read books that I enjoy, and I'm trying to become a lot better. I've mentioned this before at stopping books if I don't enjoy them. Usually by page 50 is when I decide, okay, if I don't like this book yet, I'm not finishing it, because I've always had this thing, once I start a book, I feel like I have to finish it. So I try to be a lot better about that. So anyway, let's go into it. First of all, they're two very different things. Books that are nonfiction and books that are fiction. Nonfiction, I kind of want to get something out of them. I want to either learn something. They're either business or, they can be about economics or about, I have a lot of biographies and stuff like that I like a lot. But I'm still trying to learn something from them, and which I enjoy a lot. Fiction, I kind of just want to enter into that world and be there for a while. Think like a Murakami novel where you enter into his world. And so usually what happens is fiction, especially if I like it, I make it last a long, long time because I want to take my time and enjoy that world, especially if it's a good book. While nonfiction, many times it'll be a bit quicker because I want to, get the points that I want and see what I can get out of it. And which brings me to, it brings me to this. So when I read nonfiction, I very often use, because I read a lot of books and then forget everything I read. I'm really bad at that, and I'm really bad at retention in general. And I've gotten a bit better, but still, what I try to do now, because it helps out a lot, is I use this, and I've mentioned this before as well. There are a couple different versions of this, but this is called the Fastbook Outliner version 3, and that's what I use. And I have no affiliation, by the way, and you download these for free. Just Google search for these, and you can download them for free. That's what I do. And then you can just print them out. And so what I do is, like here, you'll see it. You can circle whatever page you read something on, and then write notes about it. And so that way you can keep notes about everything you read. And so I like this a lot because it's a good way to keep track of what you read and what could be interesting in there, especially if you have, this is an excellent book, by the way, and you have a really interesting book. I hate the idea that I forgot half of what I read, right? And so anytime there's something interesting, I like to put it here. I also write about it on Goodreads, and because Goodreads is a great way to write notes on books and have access to it anywhere, because then if I travel, I'm somewhere else, I can always access Goodreads and see what I wrote in terms of notes about it. So, that's what I do. But I tend to do that, again, with nonfiction books. Books I want to get something out of, I want to retain something out of. So here, this obviously isn't directly for work, it's for pleasure. I mean, it has to do with language, but just because I like languages a lot. But I still want to get something out of it. And so that's why I keep all the notes, because I like that. I like being able to then access the notes, and it refreshes my memory, and I can see what I was reading about. I just kind of want to go through quickly some of the things that I do. But when I read fiction, like I said, I like to kind of get into it and take my time with it, enter into their worlds, which is, by the way, why usually I'm not very good with short stories. Like, you'll have short story collections and all that, and I tend not to like them because it doesn't give me enough time to enter into them. But anyway, what I like to do with fiction is many times is whenever they mention the title of the book in the story, I do a little dog ear at the bottom just to show where it happened, because it's interesting. Sometimes you notice that here is only once, but sometimes it'll be throughout. Sometimes it won't have anything until the end. There'll be a bunch of them, and I mean, there's no real reason to do that. In fact, I didn't come up with it. I heard about it from, I wish I remembered. If I remember, I'm going to write it down in the description or in the comment, because I'm pretty sure I heard it from someone on YouTube who mentioned it. I can't think who it would be. It's either an author or someone. Anyway, someone. I just feel like I should, Anyway, it's not my own idea, and I feel like I should give credit where it's due. I mean, it's not anyway, but it's yeah, it's something I like to do where, yeah, exactly, where they mention the title of the book, because usually there's a reason why they chose that title in a work of fiction, and so there's some importance to it, so I like just to dog ear it and keep track of it. But otherwise, yeah, that's usually how I read fiction. I have no problem with audiobooks, by the way. Audiobooks I love, both for fiction and nonfiction. The only issue is with nonfiction, if I want to take notes, it might be a bit harder if I'm just listening to them, but I can take notes on my phone as well. The thing is, I'll be listening to audiobooks while I'm driving or something, so it's hard to take notes that way. But otherwise, yeah, I like both methods quite a bit. In fact, audiobooks that are nonfiction, when I'm trying to learn from them, especially if they're business, I'll be listening to them, while I'm working. If it's something I don't need to worry about having text or something easy, then I can just listen to the book while on my computer, and it's very easy to take notes there as well. And so what else do I do? So here, this is something that I do that's kind of weird. Whenever I'm done with a book, I take off the dust jacket and I just put it like this in my library. I don't know why. It used to be because I was moving a lot, and so they would always get broken. And then after a while, I just really like how it looks that way better without the dust jacket. I still have all my old dust jackets, but I just like to keep the books without them. I also, by the way, use business cards as my bookmarks all the time because they're perfect for bookmarks. They help me read like that, and then I can just mark down where I am in a book. So if you ever give me your business card, chances are it ended up in a book somewhere. I have a database of all the business contacts anyway, but after that, I'm not sure what to do with the business card, so that's what I do. So what else did I want to touch on? Just one other thing, because I do read quite a bit, and I read about 150 books a year. And by the way, you can add me on Goodreads. I'll put a link to it down below. But and it was funny because there's this person I follow, Tyler Cowen. He's probably Tyler Cowen. He's probably my favorite economist out there. And I try to read pretty much everything he's written. And he reads a lot. And he will always, like every week or so, he'll have a list of what he's reading. And there are all these books. And he gets sent books before they're published and all that. And so he gets to comment on them. And he got asked in an interview how long it takes him to read a book because he's so prolific with all the books he reads. And he's like, well, look, I've been reading for about, 40 years or something now. He's like, so I would say that the last book I read, it took me about 40 years to read it. And in a way, it's true because every time you read a book, you're not just starting over from scratch, but you're bringing all the knowledge that you have from all the past books with you. So, for him, if he reads an economist book, he knows he's an economist. He's one of the best economists in the world. He knows what to look for and what to search for, and he can kind of go through it knowing exactly what to expect, what not to expect, which sections to concentrate on and not. And as you read more and more, you become a bit better at that. Not always. There are always surprises in everything you read. And, and obviously for fiction, you kind of, like I said, you just want to enjoy it and get into it. But it still helps out a lot. And I find it helps out a lot even with fiction. So, like I'm reading this. This is a collection of some short stories, which I said I don't like, I'm kind of enjoying these. This book was actually written in 1776 in Japan, and there are these old kind of ghost stories or whatever of Japanese. But what I've noticed is they have a lot of, I think all of Japanese literature, they always have allusions to stuff that kind of always seems to tie back to the tale of Genji. And which I'm glad I read. I have a video on it, by the way. It's a Japanese classic, probably the Japanese classic. I'm pointing to it right here. As you can see, it's 2 volumes. It's a huge thing, but it's interesting. And it was written about 1,000 years ago. But you find a lot of references to it here, and you find it in many other places. Murakami, I read a lot of Murakami, and there he talks a lot about spirits visiting other people, but spirits not of the dead, but of someone who's living and still able to go and visit. And this is a concept that you see in Japan that started with the tale of Genji, apparently, because it happens there. When this one woman is asleep, her spirit visits someone else and torments them and stuff like that. And apparently it has to do with, anyway, people much more well-versed than I am in this can talk about it more at length. But it is something that you see. And then, so when I see it in a Murakami novel, I'm like, oh, this is actually a very kind of Japanese thing that ultimately comes from the tale of Genji, but it is, a concept that you find a lot in those novels. And so it's interesting for fiction, too, to be able to tie together a lot of things that you read. And you get that a lot from reading and reading more. And so that's why I really feel like reading pays compound interest, as they say. You don't start every book from scratch, but each book builds off another book. Even if it's completely unrelated, you can get more out of a book just by virtue of the fact that you've read other types of books, and so that makes each new book that much more rewarding. Someone reads this and this is the first book they read in like 10 years, and they haven't read other stuff. They're not going to get nearly as much out of it as someone who's read a whole bunch, and not only of Japanese literature, but of other stuff around, because they can tie from it. I'm sure many people can get a lot more than I can out of this book, just by comparing it to other stuff they've read. That might be very personal as well, but something along those lines. So anyway, that's how I read. That's why I read. That's my philosophy of reading. I enjoy it a lot. I'm really trying to stop. There's so many good books out there that I really don't want to waste time on bad books. And so that's why I give every book I read until page 50. And if I don't like it by then, it's out. So what I'll do, some of them I'll pause, and then I'll go under stuff and see if I want to get back to it later. But otherwise, it's completely out. And that's it. I don't want to waste my time just to finish a book. That's pretty much it. So I'd love to hear about your philosophy and how you read books and your way of reading and your reasons for reading and stuff like that. Feel free to add me on Goodreads. Once again, as you can see, and as I've mentioned before, I enjoy it a lot, and it's something I like to do. And I think I've mentioned before, I'd really like to get into literature translation at some point in time. And I'm not there yet, but I'd like to be one of those people who says translated by and have my name. So yeah, and so that's why I read a lot in translation, as I've mentioned before as well. I read a lot of translated books. I just really enjoy them a lot. So if you have any recommendations, feel free to let me know that as well. And okay, anyway, I'll stop it here. That's it for now. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you find it useful in your own way. Don't forget to click thumbs up if you did enjoy this video. Don't forget to subscribe. You have more videos, mostly to do with translation, freelance translation, freelancing, working on your own, stuff like that. And I will see you on the next video. Okay, thanks. Bye. Savedum.